I stood behind the dessert counter, carefully placing the last plate of nut-free mousse, meticulously avoiding any ingredients that could trigger Cindy White's allergy. As I turned to grab a silver fork, sudden crying came from behind me. I looked back and saw Cindy holding that plate of mousse, collapsing into Eric Luke's arms, her shoulders shaking uncontrollably. Eric, Blair did this on purpose. She coughed until tears streamed from her eyes, her face unnaturally flushed. She knows I can't have walnuts. Yet she added crushed walnuts into the mousse. The silver fork in my hand clattered onto the marble floor. I hurried over and grabbed Eric Luke's sleeve. It wasn't me, Eric. I didn't add walnuts, you have to believe me. Eric Luke didn't even lift his eyelids. He raised his hand and pushed me away with such force that I staggered into the dessert counter. Plates crashed to the floor, cream splattering all over me. Blair, when will you stop? His voice was as cold as winter ice. If Cindy ends up harmed, can you take responsibility? Eric, don't blame Blair. Maybe she just forgot. I'm fine, just a little short of breath. Those words pierced Eric Luke like a needle, making him even angrier. He grabbed my wrist and dragged me to a corner of the banquet hall, where a plate of finely ground walnut powder sat on the table before us. Since you forgot Cindy is allergic, you can taste it for her. He pinched my chin, forcing me to open my mouth, his tone leaving no room for negotiation. Eat it all, and well, call it even. The scent of the walnut powder flooded my nostrils, and I burst into a coughing fit immediately. The warning signs of asthma were already coming on, my chest tightening, every breath growing more difficult. Eric, I have asthma. I can't eat nuts. It could kill me. But he thought I was just pretending to be pitiful. He sneered, scooped up a spoonful of walnut powder, and shoved it into my mouth. Stop faking it. If you really cared about Cindy, you should be able to endure this. The powder choked my airway, like someone was grabbing my throat. Each breath ripped through me like a knife, my vision darkening. I grabbed onto Eric Luke's pant leg, begging for help only to be kicked away in disgust. Don't make people sick here. He turned and lifted Cindy White into his arms, his voice softening instantly. Cindy, we're going to the hospital. I lay on the cold floor, watching their backs disappear through the door. As my mind grew hazy, I thought I saw Principal Clark rush in, her sobs both distant and painfully close. When I woke again, I was floating in midair. Below me, doctors covered my body with a white sheet, still smeared with cream that hadn't been wiped away. Principal Clark collapsed onto my body, crying as her shoulders shook violently. The doctor patted her back, offering comfort. My condolences, you arrived too late. The asthma attack caused suffocation. There was nothing we could do. I tried to hold her, but my hand slipped right through her shoulders. It was only then that I understood I was already dead, killed by the hands of the one I loved most. Dead at the very feast I had carefully prepared. It wasn't until later that I realized the doctor had called Eric Luke several times that day. Each time, Cindy White answered and told the doctor, "No need to worry about that woman," then turned off the phone. Principal Clark trembled as he signed the consent form for the cesarean section. At that time, I was already 3 months pregnant with Nancy. The baby was still alive, the only thought I had left in this world. Nancy was born prematurely, weighing only 3 pounds, placed in an incubator, fragile as a tiny kitten. Principal Clark held her close and whispered softly beside my cold body, "Blair, don't worry. I will take care of Nancy." But Cindy White never intended to let me go. She took advantage of the chaos in the hospital, found a few rough men, and secretly took my body away. I floated behind those men, watching as they carried me to an abandoned factory on the city's outskirts. The way they looked at me made my soul tremble, their eyes filled with greed and filth. I rushed forward, trying to stop them, but I passed right through their bodies, helpless. I could only watch as they touched my corpse and hear those unbearable words. Unable to say a single word in protest, Cindy White just stood to the side, arms crossed, smiling. Sunlight fell on her face, but her gaze was sharper than a snake's venom. "Blair Scott, didn't you always like to compete with me for Eric? Now like this? Can you still do that?" After she finished speaking, she pulled a bottle of sulfuric acid from her bag. As she twisted open the cap, that pungent smell burned so sharply, I felt it scorch my very soul. With a splash, the sulfuric acid was thrown onto my face. Amid the sizzling burn, I watched my cheek corrode bit by bit, the contours of my bones exposed. Yet I didn't even have the strength to close my eyes. Cindy White kicked the bottle of sulfuric acid with disgust. "Throw her into Back Mountain. Let the wild dogs eat her, so no one will come looking for her." Those few people threw my body into a deep pit in the Back Mountain. covered it with soil, and then cursed as they left. I floated above the pit, watching the earth slowly bury me bit by bit, feeling hollow inside, unable even to cry. Principal Clark searched for me day and night for 3 days. In the end, under the old locust tree on Back Mountain, he found the silver bracelet sticking out that was the gift she gave me on my 18th birthday. The one I wore every day without ever taking it off. She held my bones in her arms, crying like a child. Blair, I'm sorry for all you've suffered. I will take you home. 6 years passed just like that. I stayed close to the orphanage, watching Nancy grow up, watching her change from a tiny kitten in an incubator to a little girl who could run and laugh. Nancy didn't know that her mother had already died. Principal Clark told her that her mother had become a star in the sky, watching over her, secretly kissing her forehead as she slept. She believed it, and every night, she would lie by the window, staring at the stars. Sometimes she'd point to the brightest star and say to Principal Clark, "Ms. Clark, look, that's my mom. She's smiling at me." I floated beside her, watching her small frame, my heart both warm and aching. "Nancy, Mommy wants so badly to hold you, to tell you that Mommy is always here. Until yesterday, the hospital called Eric Luke." I floated nearby, clearly hearing the doctor say, "Mr. Luke? Miss Cindy White's liver cancer is already in its late stage. She needs a liver transplant immediately, or she won't survive more than a month." Eric's voice was anxious, but it wasn't for me. He cut the doctor off, saying, "I understand. I will find a suitable liver donor. You must save her." After hanging up, he pulled out an old phone that was my phone for 6 years. He never threw it away, yet never once made a call. The crack on the screen was still from when I dropped it. The call went through to the orphanage's landline. It rang several times before Nancy picked up. Her voice was timid, like a frightened little rabbit. "Hello, may I ask who you're looking for?" Eric's tone was impatient, like ordering a subordinate. "Where's Blair? Let her answer the phone. She's wasted enough time. Hurry back. Cindy's waiting for her to donate her liver." Nancy froze for a moment, then whispered, "Are you sure you have the right person? My mother's name is Blair Scott, but she's already become a star in the sky." I thought Eric Luke would be stunned or maybe ask, "What do you mean by star?" But he only sneered, his voice full of mockery. "Blair Scott is quite something now, and she's even teaching her child to lie. Tell her to stop pushing her luck with me." He paused, his tone even colder. "I'll go to see her tomorrow. If she dares to hide, she'll bear the consequences." The call was abruptly ended, replaced by the persistent busy signal. Nancy held the phone, her eyes red, and looked up at Principal Clark. "Ms. Clark, that person said Mom was lying. Did Mom really not become a star?" Principal Clark held Nancy in her arms and gently stroked her head. Her voice was soft, yet firm. "Your mom really did become a star. That person just doesn't know." I hovered beside them, my heart aching as if pierced by needles. "Eric Luke, how could you be so cruel? You even lied to a 6-year-old child, unwilling to accept the fact that I'm already gone." Early the next morning, Eric Luke's car was parked right in front of the orphanage. The black Bentley stood out starkly against the shabby entrance of the orphanage. He wore a black suit, his hair meticulously combed, and when he got out, his face bore its usual arrogance. The sunlight fell on him but didn't warm him with any hint of life. He looked like a cold, unfeeling statue. Principal Clark heard the noise and quickly came outside. Seeing Eric Luke, her face immediately darkened, her hands clenching the hem of her clothes tightly. "Why have you come?" Eric didn't answer. Instead, his eyes swept the area. His gaze drifted over the children playing in the yard, past the graffiti on the wall, and finally settled on Principal Clark. "Where's Blair? Tell her to come out and see me." Principal Clark's body started trembling. Furious, "Eric, how dare you ask where Blair is?" Her voice cracked with tears but held firm. "It's been 6 years since she..." Before she could finish, Eric raised his hand to cut her off, his eyes full of contempt, as if hearing the biggest joke. "What? You want to claim she's dead again? Do you really think I'd believe such lies?" I drifted beside Eric Luke, watching the look on his face. Suddenly, I remembered 6 years ago, the first time he brought me to the orphanage. Back then, he was still smiling as he handed out candy to the children, saying, "From now on, Blair and I will come visit you often," saying, "Blair likes it here, so I like it here too." At that time, there was still a spark in his eyes. How did he become such a cold and heartless man now? Principal Clark was so angry, tears nearly falling. "I'm not lying. Blair died 6 years ago. I personally took care of her body and buried her in the cemetery in City West. Buried her? Eric Luke raised an eyebrow, a mocking smile curling at the corner of his mouth. Blair Scott loves me so much. How could she possibly want to die? Did she give you something to help her pretend? After saying that, he suddenly raised his voice, shouting into the orphanage, Blair Scott, I know you're in there. Let's play a game, including the principal. There are 15 people here in total. From now on, every 10 minutes, someone will lose a limb because of you. He glanced down at the watch on his wrist, his tone icy cold, until you come out. Principal Clark's face went pale as he rushed forward to stop him. Eric Luke, you're crazy. The children are innocent. Blair really is dead. I can take you to her grave, show you the death certificate. But please don't hurt the children. Eric Luke didn't listen at all. He just fixed his gaze on the hands of his watch. When the 10 minutes were up, he gave a signal to the bodyguard behind him, without a moment's hesitation. The bodyguard immediately stepped forward and grabbed Principal Clark's right hand. Crack, the sound of bone breaking rang out sharply, harsh and piercing in the quiet courtyard. Principal Clark groaned softly in pain, cold sweat instantly breaking out on his forehead. She bit her lip, holding back tears, but her face was as pale as paper. Nancy heard the noise and ran out from inside the house. She saw Principal Clark being held down by the bodyguard, so she rushed forward. Her small body crashed into the guard's legs, but it was like hitting a stone wall. She didn't give up. Biting down hard on the bodyguard's hand, the bodyguard cried out in pain and released his grip on Principal Clark's hand. Seizing the moment, Nancy charged straight at Eric Luke. Eric Luke was caught off guard and stumbled from the hit. He snapped to, his face instantly darkening, and lifted his foot to kick Nancy in the stomach. Nancy cried out, then fell to the ground, curling into a ball. Her small hands clutched her belly, tears spilling like beads from a broken string onto the floor. You're a bad person. You're bullying Ms. Clark. Principal Clark ignored the pain in her hand and hurried over to hold Nancy. She shielded Nancy in her arms and looked up at Eric Luke, her eyes blazing with anger. Eric Luke, you wouldn't even spare a child. Are you even human? Nancy hesitated for a long moment before pulling Principal Clark behind her. She lifted her little face, still crying, but glared at Eric Luke. You're a bad person. Ms. Clark said my mom died 6 years ago, and you're still bullying us. Mom will definitely punish you from heaven. Eric's gaze fell on Nancy's face and suddenly froze. He looked Nancy over carefully, a trace of doubt in his eyes. Nancy's eyes were exactly like mine when I was little, even the way they curved when she smiled. Her eyebrows, her mouth, all carried my reflection. Instinctively, I stepped in front of Nancy, though I knew he couldn't see me. I was still terrified he might hurt her. That aged vent his hatred for me on Nancy, but Eric Luke passed right through me and grabbed Nancy. His fingers gripped Nancy's collar so tightly she struggled to breathe. His gaze dark and heavy. So, you're the bastard from back then. I'm not a bastard. Nancy struggled wildly, kicking and thrashing. My mother is Blair Scott. I have a mother. Eric Luke sneered coldly and handed Nancy over to the bodyguard beside him. Hold her down. Then he shouted into the room, Blair Scott, if you don't come out, it'll break this bastard's leg. I floated in front of Eric Luke, shouting desperately, Eric Luke, I'm here. Don't hurt Nancy. If you want to take it out on someone, take it out on me. But he couldn't hear a thing. My voice passed right through him, disappearing into the air without leaving a trace. Principal Clark gritted his teeth against the pain and crawled forward, trying to snatch Nancy back. Eric Luke, you can't hurt her. She is your own daughter. How can you treat her like this? Before the words were even finished, Eric waved his hand, signaling the bodyguards to pull Principal Clark away. The bodyguards grabbed Principal Clark by the arm, dragging her aside. Her head struck the wall with a dull thud. I threw myself onto Nancy, trying to shield her. But all I could hear was her muffled groan. Her small face was flushed bright red, tears streaming down, yet she kept crying out, Mom, save me. Mom. Eric watched it all coldly, his voice utterly void of warmth. I'll give Blair 5 more days. If she doesn't show up in 5 days, I will show you what I can do.